So in 25 years, I mean, I would be really proud if I could look back and have built an organization, not saying about the hard work aspect, that supported a lot of causes that are really going to impact, the overall planet is the only way I can say it. Is in that doesn't necessarily relate to people in some cases, which may offend others and may not. But if we don't have a place to live, we really can't do very much.
Ignition sequence start. 3, 2, 1.
Ross, how's it going, man?
Good,
dude. I'm really excited for this conversation. Founder of Maropost, CEO. I believe you're still CEO.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Chairman, CEO.
And just a good dude. I follow you on Instagram. We met a few months ago through Ryan Dice in Toronto. Yeah, it was last.
That was
May.
last summer. Yeah.
It was beautiful.
Right before all
all
summer
the
kicked
stuff.
off.
Yeah, and then you got busy. Yeah, and so you definitely got to follow Ross on Instagram because you're living a really cool life as the founder of a very successful and big, SaaS company. Talk about Maropost in regards to the size of the company, the kind of clients you work with, and kind of what it does.
Sure. So we're about 150 people. We work with customers across every vertical, every size. So both SMB, mid-market, enterprise clients.
You do have an SMB product.
Yeah, it's not an SMB product in a way. When I sort of classify that in terms of revenue, right? So we have a lot of customers who are at traffic conversion where we are right now.
Kind of like the 5K a year level.
Yeah, there's more like the 5K a month. I mean, a lot of customers who are smaller revenue wise, they just happen to send a lot of email, right? They generate a lot of the revenue from email. We actually have one of our clients here who I didn't even realize this. They're about a 25 million revenue company. They do 100% of the revenue from email. Or
no way.
100% through Maropost.
So
there's a unique dynamic within that kind of, quote unquote SMB space where just a lot of the revenue comes from that strategy.
And Toronto's HQ?
Yeah, Toronto's HQ, and then we have Chicago, and then we also have an office in India as well.
Cool. And what do you guys do? How do you separate the Toronto versus Chicago?
So Toronto is HR, finance, client success, and then some of our executive team, myself, obviously, and our COO, Joseph, is there. Our CTO is there as well.
Yeah.
Chicago is sales and marketing.
Yeah.
And then India is some development, system administration, and some support as well.
Okay, some development, but still development's mostly in Canada?
No, it's mostly in India, actually.
Oh, mostly in India.
Yeah.
And how many years has it been so far?
It's been 7 years.
Dude,
it
only 7
depends on who you
years.
talk to. Some people it's 7, some people it's 5. I mean, it's 7 if you include the first 2 years, which was I was still working at another company while funding the development. So if you count those 2 years, then it's 7.
So and then you told me it's a touchy subject, but you have a beautiful jet that's got Maropost on the front of it, which is obviously something that comes after working your butt off, and that's why I love that you said 2 years of working at a company, funding this on the side to make it go. But you bootstrap the business for pretty much the history of it, or how does that?
Yeah, so we 2.5 years ago we raised. Wouldn't be classified as a raise necessarily, but we brought in some partners, and they brought some money in, and that allowed some of our or founders, I guess, or myself,
get some liquidity.
To get some liquidity, and so it just made sense. But we've never had to raise any capital for the business to grow it. I've always been focused on very much, having a profitable company.
Yeah, cash flow, reinvest.
Yeah, I think companies get carried away now with the raising process, right?
Yeah.
That becomes the business actually more so than.
That's a good way to put it, because that's exactly what it is. The business, in some of them, their business is professional fundraisers, not executing growth in their business. What was the reasoning behind investing in the jet? Was it to? I mean, obviously you got a Chicago office.
I just really enjoyed it at the time. I've always really enjoyed I've always enjoyed traveling.
Were you trying to buy back your time though, or
yeah, sort of. Yeah. For me, it was really 10 years of all go no stop.
Hell yeah, man.
And so now, and I've never done anything sort of crazy, I guess you could say. A lot of people go out and they have a liquidity event. Yeah, and they just houses, cars. I'm actually selling the only cars I do have right now to just make my life a lot more simple.
Yeah, less things.
I wouldn't say a jet makes your life more simple, but
no.
Yeah, you do get that time aspect.
Yeah.
It really is a time machine if you want to be anywhere at any time.
And obviously like leveraging it for the business, but also being able to build relationships with partners and
for sure. Yeah. Like I the last couple of years I would,
because you're here at Traffic Conversion Summit for the week, and you
Yeah.
came from Toronto, or where did you come?
I was
prior?
coming actually from Florida.
And did you bring some customers from Florida
Not
over?
this time, but
No?
a couple of our teammates, and then we're actually flying out from here with some of our clients.
Yeah, man,
on-
making them
yeah.
feel great.
This is actually the one year where I usually fly to Austin, pick up Ryan and Richard.
Yeah,
and
he
Perry.
mentioned that. Yeah.
Yeah, and bring them. This is the one year they had
You
to
didn't
fly.
do it?
And, and they
Ah,
were talking
shit,
about
yeah.
it the whole way here, according to other
Slumming it.
people who were on the plane. Yeah.
What have you learned about scaling, business in general? Because I mean, obviously there's the nuance in the early days of software specific, but I mean, you guys are 150 employees, so it's business.
Yeah.
What have you learned trying to keep your skills, leadership, as chairman and CEO?
Yeah, I mean, a big part of it has become about the team, of course, more so than how we started. And it was I wouldn't say it was just me as an example. I do have my CTO and co-founder as an example. But I was running around, I was the same person that sold you our solution. I was the same person that supported you while you had
No
a solution. I was
way.
the same person that built you for a solution.
How
Yeah.
long did you do that for?
That's for a long time. So it was, between, years 1 through, 4 and even
And
5.
what were the customer deal sizes back then? Like, what was the deal?
They were always kind of the same, actually. They were actually a little bit higher back then. I think because, again, I was obviously going after people who were sending more
Mid-market,
campaigns,
yeah.
had
Yeah.
bigger databases, whether they were bigger companies or not.
or
didn't matter.
agencies that manage a lot of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, as an example, Digital Marketer is a customer of ours.
And they were early, right?
Yeah, they've been about 4 years.
Yeah.
And customers like them and a few others where email is a core, component to their business. They really appreciated the relationship we could bring to the table.
Yeah,
that
they
no one could
wanted
offer.
to call like the
CEO.
person.
Yeah.
And what was it that allowed you to compete? I mean, I consider email marketing a pretty competitive space.
It is and it isn't. So that's like
Okay.
a conversation that comes up, again, at every level. So, the SMB side, you've got, the true SMB side, you've got the MailChimps and the Infusionsofts and, depending on what your business
Exactly.
needs
Well,
are.
yeah.
Yeah, price-wise. And on the
Yeah.
enterprise side, you have the Salesforce Marketing Clouds, the
Yeah.
IBM Marketing Cloud, the Adobe, and so on.
Yeah.
They can't offer the level of relationship or service that we would, right? Larry Ellison and Mark Benioff are not picking
Yeah,
up the
they're
phone
not
to
taking
talk
calls.
to you. No, exactly. So, I always came into it with that at the start. I still, consider that to be our philosophy on the support side of things. So, it's just having that, view and understanding, and then building the product along with, kind of that philosophy is really what has gotten us ahead.
And how do you do that in a way? What I love is you choose a higher price point customer. It sounds like you kind of did a named account strategy where you're like, these are the companies that we know have it. So there's higher margin on that. But I mean, obviously the product also has to deliver at a sophisticated level. How do you kind of keep up to what they need at that?
That was a huge focus of ours. So when I started the business, it was that support relationship aspect, and it very quickly transitioned, not at the expense of support, but into the product side. So we, have never really been a sales and marketing organization like most of our competitors. We've been a product and support company. Not to say we aren't now focusing on that in a big way. Executing on all those really cool ideas, those ROI driving ideas early on from a technology standpoint, that was the focus. So we moved ahead very, very quickly in terms of development, in terms
The
of
right product
yeah,
innovation.
there was a lot of innovation. So
And what are some of the things that you guys brought to your product or the market
Yeah.
that your customers appreciated earlier than the rest of the market?
I mean, one of the biggest things, this is going back, again, like 6 years, was the drag and drop marketing automation side of things. It's not to say we were the first people to have that.
Yeah.
We just made it a lot easier.
Cleaner.
Cleaner, easier to use.
Are you a
easy to
product
get
guy?
into.
Is that
I wasn't, but I turned
now
out
you
to
consider
be.
yourself? You care about pixels and
Oh, for sure.
flows.
Yeah. All of the features that we realistically, have built for the most part do either come from me or are approved by me because it's such an important aspect of the company.
So that was a big area of just like campaign builders and like
campaign
the
builders.
canvas.
Yeah, the journey builders, finding better ways to target and segment and build personas now. And now it's personalization.
So essentially like segment, like pixeling customer based on what they've done. Is there like an auto tagging?
Yeah, it's all automated. So it brings everything in from a customer, subscriber, whatever you want to call it, perspective. And then, our customers can then go in and say, hey, I want to target people who've clicked on this or purchased that or have a lifetime value.
And it already happened. So it doesn't like you have to configure all these friggin'
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. See that to me is a big pain, even in my world.
That was the biggest shift actually that's happened, and why there's 7,000 MarTech companies now is people were building, more or less features and as an entire company, but they were doing it in a really easy way that of course was getting them customers because the kind of all-in-ones or the companies, the larger ones that should have that functionality, are too sort of not out of date, or not even out of touch. They're not prepared to unwind the more complex processes they've had.
Yeah.
So as in, if you're working with a Salesforce, right, you're getting, certain technology that's more, 2010 as an example.
Yeah.
The process to say accomplishing, you were using
Is it
pixels.
2010?
Version compared to 2019, which is, two
Totally
clicks
different.
and then a copy and a paste. And
Yeah.
That's it.
Oh, that's an interesting way of looking at it. So you were able to bring a workflow that was more modern to a customer that, those bigger companies, even though they might have more features, checklists, the ones that mattered, you guys can compete
That matter
against.
now, yeah.
That matter now.
Yeah.
And you mentioned relationship, but I mean, was there a lot of conference going? Like, how do you find these customers? Like, what are your tricks? Because obviously it sounds and it feels like you have, the ability to build relationships quickly and kind of listen properly. A lot of the people watching this are a little bit more introverted, but if you had to,
I fall within that group.
more so default introvert, but can play the extrovert or can go after. What do you do to build those relationships?
Yeah.
Like, how do you get in front of these accounts?
I mean, oddly enough, I do fall somewhere in the middle of introvert. I'm certainly not an extrovert like some of our common friends, like Adrian as an example.
Yeah.
We did a lot from. Well, let me step back. So I just started meeting people like the digital marketer groups, like individuals like Adrian as an example, where we just became friends almost more so than partner relationships. And it became the aspect of, well, you have this amazing product as well. We love spending time together. Why don't we work together in a way? And so it was less of sort of a sales process and more of a relationship building, kind of exercise, both on a personal side and a professional side.
Yeah. So genuinely, you were curious and were interested in other people. Like,
exactly.
Yeah. So it's like, I just find your business fascinating.
Yeah.
And then through doing great work for them, was it referral based initially?
Yeah. So we had a lot of referrals taking place. It wasn't anything like any process around it. It was just people were becoming so successful with our technology that they were recommending it to their friends. Yeah.
And what, like, was there a specific company you were taking business from? Like,
it's all over the place. I mean, the bulk of it is sort of, again, there's a lot, like tons of Salesforce Marketing Cloud, tons of Oracle, which these were all other email or marketing automation providers before. So tons at that level, a lot in the mid-market, which is more, any of these are also now owned by Oracle, as an example, bought a company called Bronto, which was big in the e-commerce side. There was Blue Hornet, which has now been merged into another product. So we get a lot from them. We get some from MailChimp. We get a lot from Infusionsoft. It just comes
no
from
one specific one. It's not like you built the business off of.
No, and I think because we can work with sort of anyone, like any vertical, there wasn't really one direction we would target.
Was there? I mean, because you deployed the accounts as well, was there some kind of like rules, like principles around how you wanted the customer experience to be in regards to response times? Like,
for sure,
yeah. So talk about that.
Yeah, so we were one of the. I don't even know if we were one of the first companies, but I'm betting we were, to actually have in-app live chat. So like 24-hour in-app live chat, I should say that. I still don't see, providers that we work with that have it. So as in, Ross is trying to launch a campaign or create a segment or create a persona or something.
And they're stuck.
Yeah, and so they're stuck. They can chat with somebody 24/7, 365 with a sub 30-second response time.
How do you train that?
At the time, it was a little more stick related. Now it's a little more carrot based.
Yeah. So I mean, like, that's hard for a product that I'm assuming has a lot of different features.
It was, yeah.
Yeah. And then so
a lot of things would roll back to me. In the early stages.
Essentially, first level, tier one, and then it could escalate and queue them up if they needed to wait. But that was something that was important to you.
Sure, yeah, that still is the number one.
Number one, making sure they never feel like you're not.
Because it goes like a lot of solutions now, right? You send in a ticket and you get a response 2 days later.
Crazy.
Yeah, like how can you run a business that way?
Yeah, no, and somehow they do. It's almost like it's
well, it's been ingrained or entrenched in their even the customers understanding that this is the norm. We're not going to get anything better. It just is what it is.
Yeah, unless we pay for it or whatever.
Yeah, and even when you do,
you still don't get it. So, and then in regards to activating accounts, would you guys go out of your way to make sure that let's say you meet one of Ryan's buddies at a conference and he's like, hey, I really want to use you. Like, were you like super proactive?
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, that's it's like, I bring this up because I meet some founders and I just feel like they're not hungry. You know what I mean?
I come from a sales background.
Perfect.
So I should have mentioned. Yeah. So that is by far I would say I'm partially depressed that I don't get to do that anymore, because that is by far the funnest.
And describe what was fun about that?
I loved showing
art
our
of the
product. I
deal.
actually think that, and I think customers would always say to me, like, you are more excited about you selling us your product, that how can we not be excited? Like, you're showing us this feature and you're telling about all we're going to do with it, and you're more excited than our own team is based on that. Like, how can we not be, kind of, it's supposed to going through the demo and you're like, oh yes, they have segments and automation and journeys and so on and so forth. And then you get to the end, and then there's all these other conversations around, contracts and legal and so on. That ruins the whole experience, right? You want to be able to get through that quickly and then jump in and be excited about what the first stages of the relationship is going to be like. And I miss that a lot.
You miss that demo, that show and tell, that just excitement for the product.
Yeah.
What were some of from a leadership point of view? Because I feel like that, folks kind of past the 2025 people, what are some of the things, how did you develop who you were to be able to lead the company?
That's still an ongoing process very much, because there was, up until the last couple of years, we didn't have really an executive team or anything. It was still a lot of Ross related activities. Not because I wanted to hold on to those or anything.
It grew so quick.
Yeah, it just grew so quickly.
You care about those areas.
Yeah, and that was a big thing. And so giving up the reins and support and in sales and in marketing and
what went first for you? Like, what did you delegate or hire?
It was the support, some of the support side.
Okay, so
things.
support and customer success, kind of have somebody lead that, and then they run off on that, and then you kept marketing and sales.
Yeah, marketing. We really
don't really do marketing.
No,
for
we
a
didn't
while.
really.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I'd say just now are we really, starting to do things.
Well, I spoke on your stage, so I know you're spending some money on.
Yeah. Well, no, we did a lot of that though, right? We did
you still did the sponsor of events.
And that gave us the exposure, but it really wasn't a focus of
like you lead generation.
Correct.
Yeah, it was more of like brand awareness, so that people are like, oh, I've heard of you guys.
Yeah.
So that made the conversation easier.
Exactly.
How do you guys plan? Like, how do you plan strategy, if you don't mind me asking, around like cadence, communication?
Yeah. So I'd say a lot of that. I mean, do you mean around how we communicate with our customers?
No, more about like, how do you lead your executive team now? Like, what's the planning cadence? What's the
so a lot of it is kind of after me, it's a single point. So it goes from me to my COO, and then down to our CTO and our VP levels from a sales marketing perspective. That was a huge focus, I'd say, over the last 12 months. Which is more, it's placing me in the role I was meant to be in. I'm not a people manager. That is certainly not one of my fortes. So, my COO kind of operates as the integrator within the business, and I operate with kind of the vision and direction of it.
Yeah.
And that makes things a lot easier. Because
when did you apply that kind of, Gino Wickman style?
Yeah. That's exactly, that was the book our CEO was reading.
It's like,
we got to do
traction.
This.
Yeah. So when did that come?
I was probably starting 12 months ago.
Wow, it's that new.
Yeah, that new.
But you built a big company even without that.
Yeah, but I think because we had so many great relationships and we had this amazing product, like it was easy to drive it forward. But that next stage is not going to allow.
What got you here won't get you there.
Sure, yeah.
And what do you appreciate about that now? Is it fun or not, knowing that you don't have to manage the people side?
Yeah, that certainly is. But again, I miss some areas that I know I have. That have
talent,
to be given
skill,
up. Yeah, we've got an amazing sales executive that came over from Salesforce. Actually, he's in charge of that team. Ross is not on demos anymore. Ross is not doing pitches. Yeah. He's not processing paperwork. It's not to say I can't miss those things, but
processing paperwork though.
Yeah, that was the funnest part.
Why?
The best part about it was because you would, the day would end or it'd be 12 o'clock and the DocuSign hits your, and then you send that off to finance. That's it. Yeah, it's your closing deals. I mean, that's
true, man. There is something exciting about the art of the deal. It's like going hunting, and it's the closure of the work.
Yeah.
Where do you see the opportunity for your guys' business in the future? Like, what do you see in this space in regards to where's it going?
I mean, there's been a lot of consolidation, right? Like the sales forces are buying companies up like crazy. There's, I'm actually seeing a lot of companies who, are relatively stagnant or even on a decline, that they're partnering or somebody's acquiring, somebody to see if they can, produce greater results, combined versus as individuals. For us, I mean, it's more about where we're going to take the product, and
because you got to choose a problem space, right?
Yeah,
like that's
every. The great thing for us is every vertical that we seem to function in is a problem space.
Yeah.
Everyone is dealing with issues within marketing automation, whether it's engagement issues, whether it's it's customer retention issues, whether it's
So it's communication.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to.
There's a lot going on there.
Yeah,
I mean,
so there's no
we went
lack
from,
of opportunity.
300 or 500, 6 years ago on the MarTech, kind of spectrum
Stack,
to 7,000 plus now.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and so that's what I meant about kind of those feature as a company aspects. I mean, for us, it's avoiding all of that. It's saying, our focus.
What is how do you guys define your core right now as a business?
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say actually. Is so the core up until 2 years ago was email, mobile, social marketing, automation, marketing cloud, what have you. Now it's more single customer view and bringing in the e-commerce aspect of that, and then bringing in the support and the service aspect of that. So really focusing on the overall customer journey, not just the
like a
marketing
360.
journey. Correct.
Yeah. So now you have like lifetime value.
Exactly.
You have the
when we
purchase
have that
history.
already, and that's the great piece because we bring that information into the marketing side.
So when you're doing
target.
support, now all of a sudden you've got a 360
Exactly.
view.
Yeah. If I had a screen here, I would show you. It's bringing all of those communication aspects in, all of the purchasing information, all of the service and support.
And do you
aspects
care
into
if they
one
do
location.
those activities off platform and you just
Our
integrate it?
focus would be for them to do them in our platform.
Okay.
We're not looking to be an integrator, as an example, and that's what a lot of people are doing.
Yeah.
That's not the philosophy that I think is going to make people successful.
Yeah, you want them to have a native
You want
experience.
actionable information, right? Anyone can go buy Tableau or Domo or Grow or Looker or whatever. That's great. I love looking at pretty dashboards. But I'm like, okay, how do I click this and then do something?
To drive, to do some action around it.
Yeah.
What have you learned about building SaaS? Like, what's the what haven't you learned
Everything.
really?
What haven't I learned?
Yeah.
What do you mean when you say that?
Who have you learned from, or like what were some of the things that weren't so obvious in the beginning?
So I talk about this way too much, and it's not a positive in any way, and I do not recommend it. But I was never a reader. I literally have not finished a book even to this date, whether that be audio and it's being read to me or physical. I would have spent more time doing that if I could have gone back, because it's not that I think we made a lot of mistakes. I don't think we've made that many compared to what happens in a lot of scenarios, and that's great, and I'm excited and happy about that, and lucky at the same time. But I think there was clearly things that could have been done at an earlier stage. I would have brought in more individuals at a leadership perspective. Maybe in year 3 and 4, I would have invested in them as well. I don't mean in them from a budgetary standpoint, but bring in the
coach
right
them.
people.
And
coach
like
them
spend more time.
And investing in a way where I don't have to coach them actually. Like I used an example. Our COO came from a CIBC, a big
bank,
top 5 Canadian bank. I don't need to coach him on all of these areas. We brought in an SVP of sales from Salesforce. We don't need to coach him. We brought in an SVP of marketing from another multi-billion-dollar organization. We don't have to coach him.
Yeah.
So that's been something I wish I would have done a little bit, or could have, but that's not the path.
What's your way of learning then if it's not books? Because obviously you've grown.
I go with my intuition a lot.
Yeah.
I do believe people really need to go with their gut in order to be happy about the decision they've made, both positive and negative. There's no second chances, there's no take backs. So you have to be comfortable with that. And the more comfortable you are with obviously your past history, the more comfortable you're of course going to be with making those decisions moving forward. I've never had a problem with decision making.
So you feel like you've always been pretty decisive.
Yeah, I've been very decisive, both positive
good and bad,
yeah, both good and bad. But I think
sword.
now when we're at the stage we're at today is now I have to start understanding, okay, where did people go wrong, in the 20 or 30 to 100 million or the 100 million to 200 million. It's not going to be the same, story that got us from 0 to 20.
Do you feel like the
30.
partners that you worked with was a source of knowledge around scale? Like, because I feel so you didn't learn it like.
Well, it's just that never came up because it wasn't
really
okay. Yeah, it wasn't a thing. It was
So who
Not
did
saying it
you
shouldn't
learn?
be.
Yeah, no. Who did you learn from, or is it really just
on our own
intuition?
Yeah.
Man, that's really unique.
Yeah.
And then
I listen to my customers. At the same time, like as in, if somebody had an idea or a concept, we would take that idea or concept and merge it with maybe a bunch of others we had, and we're like, oh, this is even
did you have
better
a
now.
process for doing that?
No.
So really just like get close to the customer.
Correct, yeah.
And then feed that back into
But
product
like I said,
roadmap.
the same individual who was,
selling,
bringing you on
deploying,
board,
and signing
was
contracts.
supporting you at the same time. So I have the access to that.
Did you
information on
sleep
both sides.
for
Not a lot, no.
No.
But I love that. It was
Yeah.
so fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to. You said something a little bit earlier about people not willing to, sort of grind or used a different term, but
They're just I don't feel like they're driven.
yeah, if you're not driven, you do not belong.
And I say this, Ross, because what I love, what it sounds like based on what you're sharing is, I meet people all the time. It's like they're in an industry, and there's a lead. Like they're at a dinner, and they're like, this person's like, oh, I'd love to talk sometime, and they're just like, okay, cool, we'll talk.
This is a soft subject,
and I'm just like,
yeah,
dude, get his card, get his contact,
Call him
schedule
right
a
now.
meeting,
Book
let's
the
do it.
meeting
What are
now.
you doing? I mean, I remember one time my brother, he sells houses, and he's at the gym, and a friend of his said, yeah, my buddy Chris, who runs the BMW dealership, is going to build a new house. My brother's like, can you make an introduction? What's his cell number? I want to talk to Chris before he decides on a builder. And it's like, that's the level of intensity that I feel is lacking.
For sure.
It sounds like that was innate in you. Did that come from the sales training?
No, actually, I shouldn't say no. I didn't really ever have sales training.
Okay, but you were in sales prior?
Yeah, correct. In the first direct sales job I had, the first weekend or role I had, the first weekend we had Sandler sales training. I can't remember any of it
Sandler. I remember.
today.
Yeah.
And funny enough, it was taught by an Indian gentleman named Guru Ganesh. I can't believe I remember that. But I think there's fundamentals there that I kept, but it was the work ethic that really got us there.
Yeah, and when you say work ethic, it was the
putting in the time,
doing the time,
in the time,
building the book of business, the prospecting.
Well, yeah, just you got to be, as you just said a minute ago, people don't want to, it's almost like a lot of people, even in sales, they're afraid of people. So you're not willing to say, hey, I've got Dan on the hook here. Let's just book a meeting right now. You know what I mean? If you change it later, you change it later. If you don't, then great. I'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, they are afraid of people.
They are, yeah.
It's so weird.
Yeah. And it's not, I don't know if it's getting better or worse, or companies are making it easier to sell with, sales enablement tools and lead generation tools and communication, sales automation is obviously a big piece. Mm-hmm. I hope that's not the case. I hope there still is like maybe a resurgence of the human side of things. Yeah. But, that's why a lot of companies want to build, self-service products. And we are doing that ourselves as an addition to what we're doing today.
Customers do want to self-serve in certain circumstances, but nothing's going to replace the human touch. Where do you see, I'd love to know, how did you guys make the decision to, I know you said some liquidity for early founders, but how did you go through that process? Did you hire a bank? Did you?
We actually just had organizations, actually very similar to how we were getting customers by referral. Like people were just hearing about us in the VC private equity space, and we had sort of leapfrogged a lot of that given our revenue growth. Right, usually you're being caught in the 2, 3, 5 million in revenue. We were 20 plus when we were getting our first reach outs. So, we went through there was probably 100 that we met over an 18-month.
Did you really talk with 100 different?
I mean, some more than others, right? Some you realize quickly, like, oh, we're not interested in anything here. And we weren't going out to market though. So, so we did finally bring on, an investor or investment banker, which is coincidentally the same team that our COO was on. And that's how you met the CEO. Yeah, that's how we met.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. And so, it's, where was I going with that? Just in regards to, going
evaluating.
Evaluating it. What I would do today would have been a lot different than what I did back then. Back then people are showing up with these huge checks, and now those checks have gotten even bigger because there's not a lot of opportunity out there for great company or with great companies, and so they're all bidding against each other in a way. And I don't know that that's a positive thing for the industry. I'm kind of going off topic here to your question.
No, I love it.
I think as we kind of went through the process with them, we were actually at the end, and I was like, you know what, I don't even want to think about this anymore because it's
somebody else take it. It is so draining.
It's draining. Yeah.
So you're just like, somebody else take care of
it.
Well,
no, we didn't even do that. And then the current partners that we have now just kind of popped up last minute. But after that, it would have been no more.
Really?
Like zero. Like forget it. Yeah.
Did they literally just like
the next week? Yeah. Yeah,
it's right so interesting how sometimes it's just timing in the moment. Yeah. And were the numbers public ever, Ross?
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
And how much did you guys?
37 million US at 163.
And what's what's the goal for you? Is it to IPO?
Yeah, it would be that if anything. I mean, my focus has always been to build a really good organization or great organization, I should say. Yeah. It's never been to sell to somebody else and just have that buried and kind of sail off into the sunset. You know what I mean? What's the point of spending 10 or 20 or in many cases 30, 40 years of your life only to do that? Yeah. So for us, I think the natural progression is to move into a public direction, but I'm not over here thinking like, if we don't go public, like we're, you know,
we
we're
failed or
nothing and we
whatever,
failed.
yeah.
It's not that at all.
You don't care. You just
No.
want to build a great
company.
I love that you corrected yourself.
Yeah.
A great company. A lot of people. Yeah. I mean, so how do you think of doing that? Because I mean, I'm sure you've gotten a ton of people inbound that have expressed interest to acquire. How do you decide not to sell versus raise capital?
I mean, I think that would get or become very difficult at certain numbers, right?
Yeah.
If somebody shows up with a check for $1 billion, it's gonna be
Yeah.
a little hard to say no to that.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're totally unreasonable.
Yeah. That's a good way to explain it. Unreasonable.
Yeah.
Not thinking.
No, exactly. So, you know, I think again, it just goes back to that philosophy. Like, it's not, you know, I think there's certain stages for founders, or I hope these are the stages they go through, where at first it's about, you know, growing the business and making money. And for me, it was about building a profitable.
In the beginning, focus on money, and then it transitioned though.
Correct.
To building a business.
Exactly. But still maintaining profitability, right? And that's a big issue, or my belief, it's a big
100%.
issue in the tech space right now, because again, there's
a lot of capital chasing money.
Your business becomes raising money.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not even in business to sell software here.
I'm a professional fundraiser.
Professional fundraisers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would, like, myself or personally, I would love to see our industry move away from that. Highly unlikely, because again of the amount of money that is
The
out there
upside
and
that's out.
available.
Yeah.
It's just growing. I mean, last week I heard about a fund that, you know, they opened up a new fund. It's $8 billion. Like, I don't even think there's $8 billion that you can spend in the verticals they're in right now, unless you're putting, you know, 5 of that into Uber or Facebook or what have you. Which would
but I mean, so it sounds like you went from, you know, building the product, making money, then a choice to like, I want to build a great company. Because I think like people ask me like, well, how do I know if I should sell or not? It's like, well, if you're going to sell the business and you know you're going to you want to build another one, and you probably want to build something similar. Yeah. Why sell it? Because that's the vehicle. You know what I mean? Like, is that true for you?
That
it's
is true. Yeah. I've actually sharing this, just a personal thought I've gone through over the last kind of 6 months, is whether this is the last company.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, is this the last one, or is this one of 3, or one of, hopefully not one of 5 or 10, but you know, one of a couple more, and that's just the natural progression for myself? Or is this the one?
This
you know
the one.
So you have to really, those are actually, you asked a question earlier, which is in regards to like sort of like decision making and such. Those are the tough decisions you have to make at sort of this stage. Do we want to, again, because you have to make a bunch of very critical choices within a relatively short amount of time that are going to move you in that direction. You know, in the least stress, or with the least stress possible.
Yeah, impact on the business. Yeah. What does a great company mean to you?
You know, again, I've always been tied, this may be the sales individual in me, but always been tied to profitability, right? I think that, again, it goes back to work ethic. If you can work really hard, your company can be more profitable. I think that will hit a limit at some point. I think that's an amazing piece, because again, you have a business that is actually producing cash, and you're doing that, whether that be for yourself, whether that be for the growth of the business, whether that be for your team, your employees, whatever structure you have. You know, I think you once you reach a certain size as well, you really have to think about, okay, what are we doing with this thing? I don't mean going public or selling to somebody else. Like, are we going to use this to impact the world? Are we going to use this to provide better education? Are we going to use this because we want to protect the environment, right? And
the impact side.
Yeah.
Can't be just about the cash anymore.
Yeah. The philanthropic or philosophical side of things really, comes into play. I think some people think about that too early, and then it becomes about,
stunts the potential growth and impact.
Exactly. I really want to have a social cause here. Well, that's great. You made $500,000 last year. You can't really help anybody. Maybe you can help yourself, but I want to see. I'd love to see more people do that at the stage where they're established, the business is strong, the customer base is strong, and they've got a great growth plan.
Have you guys made that decision already at Maropost?
I have.
Okay.
And I, I speak for the company, but that we haven't done as much as I wish we would, but I know why, and I want to have a plan around what we're going to do over the next 3 to 5 to 10 years kind of
and
thing.
What companies inspire you around that in regards to impact of the
that's a great question. I mean, there's of course a lot of the kind of e-commerce or retail organizations that
more
are giving
consumer focused, like the Warbies and
exactly what I was going to say. The Warbies, DeFiWare, Toms, come to mind, where they're giving away one product for every. I mean, that's great. I think there's a marketing strategy there.
100% of marketing strategy there. Yeah.
Yeah, but at least they're doing something, right? And I think that's
they could have chose not to do it.
Yeah, you could, and that's what most people do. They don't do anything. Again, even the larger organizations, like I hate to say this, Salesforce does a great job. Like they really do give back a lot.
Dude.
I actually don't think they get enough credit for the work that
The
they
1%,
do.
man.
Yeah.
It inspired me.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I think every company has to start thinking about those things earlier on as part of their goals, like as part of their strategy. Like, okay, maybe this year we're going to hit 50 million, but in March 2022, what are we going to do with
From an impact?
Are we going to give 1% of our revenue to X, or are we going to provide more to our?
Now, was
our
that important to you
teammates?
because of you personally wanted that to be part of the drive of the growth, or was that for the employees, or?
No, sorry. At this stage, it's just sort of my philosophy on what we need to do. Like obviously there's a lot of noise in the political landscape these days. Definitely don't want to get into that, but we don't seem to be doing very much as a collective group, and the leaders that we've chosen don't seem to be doing very much. And maybe that's because it's becoming more complicated, or there's different goals in mind from different. I shouldn't be getting into this, but political parties. Whereas it's coming down to individuals, ironically, in many cases, in the tech space of all spaces, who are driving, the next stage.
Change.
Elon Musk's focus is to create, enough, kind of sustainable organizations on Earth, or hey, we're heading to Mars. That's more or less his philosophy.
Yeah, and transition us off of fossil fuels.
Fossil fuels. Yeah, but what if that doesn't work? So that's why I have the space company over here.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So you just feel the innate drive to want that for yourself, and you feel responsibility for doing that. The business growth for you is, yes, let's still be profitable and generate cash, but also let's ask ourselves why we do this as well. Like, how do we? Because I think
we only need a certain amount, right?
Yeah.
Like you're a successful guy. You want to continue to be successful. Same here. Like, no one needs $1 billion.
No,
you just don't. I'm not saying you shouldn't have $1 billion or you should give it all away, and it's totally your choice. You earn that right, and I have nothing but respect for the people who did earn it. But I live a nice life as you do, and as many of the individuals do here, and many of our mutual friends. And what more can you buy?
Yeah.
As I said, you don't need 10 homes. You don't need 2 cars.
I think that's the fascinating part, is building the business to be a vehicle of change.
Yeah.
And for me, anyways, the change to the biggest impact is on our team, right?
Yeah,
like be an example of excellence, right? Like, do you think about that of like, I want to build a business and operate or lead people in a way that really sets a standard for them if they go and...
I do, yeah. But I also feel that that's difficult these days.
Because of the transient nature of employment, or...
That's definitely one. I mean, that, as well as just, again, people... It's like I said with the business aspect before, people come into it with this social idea involved, and it's like, okay, but I'm not making any money. So like, these things don't go together. Like, you do need funds to do something, to make a change, to make an aspect. Of course, you can donate your time. That's the same thing. But people seem, in many cases, are too busy to donate that time because it's happy hour at 5 o'clock, or because their friends all want to go cycling on the weekend or ride around on scooters or whatnot.
Got it.
I mean, that's a difficult, kind of area for me, because, again, I've kind of leapfrogged a few times personally, and the company has done the same. So, stepping back and saying, okay, now you guys all have to do this when I'm living a certain kind of lifestyle while I'm able to do all these other great things doesn't always go hand in hand.
Got it. Fast forward 25 years. What do you want it's a big question, but whatever.
Yeah.
I like asking them. What do you want to, looking back, what would have made you proud? Like, what would you have wanted to accomplish that you'd be like, oh, okay, that was a good 20?
It's a great question. I was actually, and before I answer that, I met a gentleman the other night here at the conference who he's got to be, in his 60s or 70s. And he said, you're not going to look back when you're 80 and be like, yeah, I worked really hard. You're going to look back and think about all the experiences that you had with, friends, family, and all that kind of stuff. So in 25 years, I would be really proud if I could look back and have built an organization, not saying about the hard work aspect, that supported a lot of causes that are really going to impact, the overall planet is the only way I can say it. That doesn't necessarily relate to people in some cases, which may offend others and may not. But if we don't have a place to live, we really can't do very much. So, making an impact in that area to me would be critical. Again, the common themes today are obviously cleaning up our oceans, of course, creating better recycling and programs, renewable energy as an example, protecting our, animal community in terms of extinction, right? We seem to be, winding that clock down even quicker these days. I think that's becoming very hard, it's becoming very difficult. And it's not that I would ever want to say that it can't be done, but people really need to turn a corner here, collectively, and makes decisions that couldn't sometimes be painful. And obviously it's not coming in the best form from the guy who's flying around on a private jet. But I do, cover all of our carbon costs and that. I don't tell people that because I deserve any sympathy or credit or anything like that. It's just, that's, the choice I've made.
You made. Yeah.
Yeah. It's my personal choice. And I also make those choices, to benefit, everyone.
That's awesome. Ross, I really appreciate the time, man. Thanks so much for coming on here. We'll talk soon, bro.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thanks for watching this episode of Escape Velocity. Be sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment with your biggest insight from our conversation. Be sure to check out the next episode.